This is Suzuki Iruma-kun, a kid whose parents are such scumbags that they literally forced him to part-time on a fishing ship. He's only 14 by the way. Then sold him to a demon for some extra pocket change. This demon is named Sullivan, and it is not what you think. You see, Sullivan simply wants Iruma to be his grandson as he's single and has no children, not to mention grandchildren at all. However, Iruma-kun is a yes man, meaning he doesn't refuse anyone or anything, so he naturally accepts it. Ooh. I mean, look at that crying face, who wouldn't, yeah? Anyway, Iruma immediately enters his new demon life as he tries to get used to his new room filled with many luxuries. Sullivan appears the next day and sends him to the demon school, Babulus, along with his assistant, Opera-san. Iruma-kun makes it into school with his heart pounding for fear of being eaten, and enters the entrance ceremony. The ceremony starts and they sing the school anthem about eating humans and black wings, and Iruma is stuck between a rock and a hard place, quite literally. Sullivan then reappears and we find out that he's actually the school's principal. The freshman representative, Asmodeus Alice, then goes for his speech, but then Sullivan, the grandpa principal, decides to make Iruma give the speech instead. This is totally not preferential treatment, I'm sure. As Iruma stands helpless, his new grandpa scams him into reading a forbidden curse which shocks and excites everyone present at the same time. The spell would have blown off all his limbs if he mispronounced even a single word, but Iruma-kun pulls it off and gains the ability to not fall for the entire day. Asmodeus is obviously upset and challenges Iruma to a duel. He tries his best, but Iruma evades all his attacks. We learn that his past hellish experiences have allowed him to have an 100% attack evasion, allowing him to evade anything and everything basically. Alice-kun gets mad and tries to swing a sword, but he misses and Iruma has to step in, and in doing so performs a German suplex on Alice-kun. And because of that, Alice then appears the next day calling Iruma-kun Sama instead and saying that he wishes to serve Iruma-sama from now onwards. And so Iruma-kun gains his first subordinate. Nice. Anyway, Iruma-kun continues to enjoy his new circumstances, and Sullivan or Ji-san continues to splurge on his new grandson in all sorts of ways. The next day at school, we see the student council president showing off her presents. Iruma soon gets ambushed by Alice-kun at school, and then they proceed on to today's lesson on summoning familiars. Their teacher for today, Naberius Kalego, arrives in style and shows his clear disdain for Iruma-kun. He briefly teaches them the art of summoning, and thus they start. Iruma's classmates then begin summoning their familiars one by one. Alice-kun summons a mighty flame gorgon serpent, no surprise there. Iruma's turn is next, and because he's a human instead of summoning a regular familiar, Iruma summons Kalego-sensei as his familiar instead. Kalego-sensei reappears in his new cutesy shape before Iruma and everyone else present, and Iruma's act of a demon summoning another demon as a familiar gains the respect of his entire class. Fluffy Kalego-sensei tries to revolt, but he obviously can't, and they later learn that this contract will be in place for at least a year, as forcibly cancelling the contract will mean death for both. Anyway, Iruma becomes even more infamous in school, and he soon meets a green-haired hyperactive ADHD girl named Clara, who smashes into a box of textbooks along the way. The three of them get kidnapped by their teacher together, and because Clara says the magic word, please, Iruma does everything Clara asks him to do, and Alice-kun soon follows as well. We soon see some of Clara's other friends in school, and we learn that they've been taking advantage of Clara's magic pocket abilities, basically bullying. Iruma thus decides to play with Clara, but this time without any of the conditions that her bully friends used to set. Clara then later overhears her bullies talking behind her back, saying that Iruma and Alice are only playing with her because she's convenient. She later tries to offer Iruma more sweets and gifts in order to prevent him from leaving her, but Iruma tells her that he doesn't need anything in return for playing with her, and instead tells her to just play with them more. Clara is of course overjoyed at this, and this time she refuses the bully friends with a giant vending machine instead. Anyway, Alice-kun joins and the three of them goes to the canteen. Iruma-kun learns of the ranking system in the school, and people can only order food that belongs in the same rank that they are in. Iruma and gang gets pranked by a massive amount of food, but Iruma eats them all nonetheless, and makes the chef faint from being overcooked. Kalego-sensei also comes by, now in his normal form. He also gets harassed by Clara, and soon gets forced into his familiar form. Though Clara soon gets chased off by the shopkeeper for stealing a summoning circle, we see their friendships blossom as Iruma explains to Clara and Alice what the word friends mean, and the two of them, though not quite understanding its meaning completely do deepen their friendships even further. And the next day, the three of them learn that they have been placed in the same class, albeit in the abnormal class where all the weird kids gather. In any case, the three of them make their way down a flight of stairs into their new class. Iruma's 100% evasion kicks in as he evades everything and meets their new classmates. We soon see a thick boy, Sabunok Saburo, who appears and says that he will become the highest ranked student and become the demon lord, the Mao, and that he will make everyone kneel before him. Caligo Sensei soon appears, and it would appear that he is their homeroom teacher. Homeroom soon starts as we are introduced to everyone in the class, and then immediately they proceed to a series of courses that will determine their ranks. Their goal is to reach the red flag, but this time only one course is available, as the magical guardian of the Cutthroat Valley course is moody, so they are forbidden from going that way. Everyone begins immediately with their wings out, but Iruma himself has no wings, but he gets pushed off anyway. We see furry hentai classmate getting rejected, but Clara and Alice seem to be doing quite okay. Sabunok goes into the forbidden course and soon gets himself vacuumed into a hole. Meanwhile, Iruma hitches a ride with a demon crowd, but somehow the crowd drops him and he ends up in the Cutthroat Valley himself and comes face to face with a giant burb. He notices the burb is injured and offers to treat its wounds. Burb-kun accepts his offer, but somehow a drop of his blood cures his wounds instead. Burb-kun is happy, and Happy Burb then gives Iruma a ride. Sabunok, on the other hand, faces an impending doom as he is attacked by the giant fluffy guardian. He desperately tries to defend and fight back as Iruma-kun suddenly appears out of nowhere, and we learn that the black bear is apparently the parent of the Happy Burb. Sabunok and Iruma gives up fighting, and the guardian also bows in gratitude to Iruma-kun for saving his or her child. Anyway, later on everyone has arrived, save for Iruma and Sabunok, but soon those two also appear along with the guardian of the valley, and thus completing the course. Later, the RNG rank sorting begins, and Sabunok-kun makes Iruma his rival and also thanks him for saving him earlier. Alice gets rank 4, and as a reminder, demon ranks start from rank 1 being the lowest to rank 10 being the highest. Sabunok gets rank 2, and finally, Iruma draws his rank, but the owl hoots and runs away. Iruma ends up with the Demon King's Golden Ring of Solomon as mentioned in the prophecies instead. Everyone backs away as Iruma's ring produces a black flame and nobody seems to be able to make it go away. Sullivan or Jisan soon appears and handily stops the lethal flame from raging. Apparently this ring is the ring of gluttony and it was just hungry for energy. Anyway, they take a photo together and Iruma ends up with the lowest rank, of course though he doesn't really mind that much. The others in the school however thinks otherwise as Iruma's weird rumors start to spread. Anyway, the next day Sullivan or Jisan appears in a fancy chariot as Iruma is chauffeured to school with a red carpet treatment. Sullivan or Jisan also appears with a new phone for Iruma, but Iruma hurriedly escapes to avoid any more attention. Anyway, Iruma and the abnormal class goes off for their new botany classes and all is normal, or as normal as it can be for this class. Everyone's personalities are reflected in their flowers, and Iruma on the other hand, with the ring of gluttony, produces a giant sakura tree. It's so huge that it actually protrudes out from the botany tower and at the same time gaining the attention of the student council president Azazel Amari, who's apparently quite the feisty lady as her appearance would suggest. However, she's got quite the secret beneath as we see rows upon rows of secret treasures and holy texts hidden away. Basically manga. She's into the high school romance genre by the way. However, she doesn't quite understand the human's language and has been having difficulty trying to understand the story. Later on, Iruma goes to help some cleaners in the school as Alice and Clara comes by to help out as well. Later though, he runs into the student council president just like the manga she's been reading. Oh my, spring has come for our little president indeed. However, Amari also realizes that Iruma is a human as she somehow equates all of his actions into those reading the manga as they themselves get into a standoff of sorts. Amari's manga drops out and she realizes that Iruma can actually read her holy text. She does a 180 and Iruma gets to part-time as a manga translator in Amari's student council. Amari becomes mesmerized by Iruma's narration and gets more and more engrossed in the world of manga. Interesting turn of events here. Anyway, Amari now sets her sights on Iruma as she passes him her number. Iruma leaves the place semi-confused while Amari continues to indulge herself in her holy texts. Anyway, the next day, Amari continues to learn from the holy texts as she calls Iruma over for a more holy text translation. Though they do get discovered by Alice and Clara later on, Iruma and Amari chat for a little bit and they have a little discussion on dreams and ambitions. Meanwhile, Alice-chan desperately tries to prevent Clara from invading their conversation, though it ultimately proves to be quite the impossible task. Clara gets jealous of Amari and picks the succubus course in seduction to become more attractive to Iruma-kun, I'm sure. However, despite Miss Rang's best attempts, Clara seems to require a bit more assistance in this regard. A disappointed Clara later returns home to her siblings and starts a mass smooching exercise. As her mood improves, she tries the same smooch on Iruma but gets evaded, of course. An unhappy Clara later on rolls around the grass as she comes to terms with the fact that she is not seductive at all. However, later when Iruma reappears again, she realizes that Iruma does still see her as a girl, even if she's not the most sexually attractive, and tells Iruma that she'll make him fall for her one day. And the next day, Iruma tells his friends that he's decided to rank up, much to the eternal happiness of Alice-chan, and he proclaims to everyone present that Iruma shall be ranking up soon. Alice-chan then brings them to do some extra tuition on the next ranking up exercise, which is the execution cannonball, basically dodgeball. Anyway, the trio continue their training, though the rest of his class soon joins in, and soon this dodgeball practice turns into something more like deathball instead, and thus Iruma goes on to request for special training from Sullivan Oji-san, who's obviously happy that he has been requested for assistance. He teaches him how to use his ring when throwing, and Iruma unleashes an torrential dragon of sorts, to which Iruma soon rejects and requests that he win without his grandpa's magic assistance that's embedded into the ring. Thus, Sullivan Oji-san decides to strengthen his hands instead. Opera-san soon takes over the training and throws some balls at Iruma, but of course his 100% evasion kicks in and none hit him. Their practice continues as Iruma learns to catch the ball, do more physical training and exercise, and eat a lot of food, and learn about how to read Opera-san's mood by his ears. And finally, after much training, he manages to catch the ball. And on the day of the exercise, Caligo-sensei briefly explains the rules before splitting them into teams. Though it happens that Alice and Iruma are now on different teams this time, Caligo-sensei takes no objections and soon the match starts. Alice-chan's team gets the ball stolen as Subnok fires his shot, and over the course of the match, Clara decides to spawn a bunch of other balls, causing a big mess. Iruma ends up with the ball but realizes that he hasn't learned how to throw the ball just yet, so he passes the ball to Subnok instead, who attacks Alice-chan but gets counterattacked instead. Iruma and Alice are the only ones left soon after, and Alice-chan wants to let Iruma have an easy win, but after seeing Iruma's clear determination for himself, he decides to do otherwise and go all out. Meanwhile, Amari-chan also pops by to observe the match. Alice-chan launches his attacks and Iruma runs forward to receive, taking all he has. He then redirects the ball's energy and launches an attack of his own, thus ousting Alice-chan and winning the game for his team, much to their happiness. Caligo-sensei recognizes Iruma's efforts and thus decides to promote Iruma to rank 2, much to Iruma's excitement. Amari-chan pops by to congratulate Iruma-kun and continues her speech about ambition. Anyway, Iruma returns home to express his thanks to Opera, albeit much to Sullivan Oji-san's jealousy. A while later, we see that Iruma and Amari's holy text translation sessions are still ongoing, and soon Iruma goes to class to discover a new sensei. He is super enthusiastic but seems to be a bit of an airhead. Anyway, their new lessons seem to be on communication with familiars, and just as everyone shows off their familiars, it soon becomes Iruma's turn, and unable to reject his new sensei's request, he summons Caligo-sensei, who just so happens to be in a talk with his colleague, and voila, out comes the fluffy Caligo-sensei once again, along with all the perks that come with that, I suppose. Anyway, the pair begins their familiar lesson all on their own, albeit with a heavy dose of Caligo-sensei's favor, although I'm not too sure about the frisbee part. Anyway, the pair is forced into more familiar exercises, and soon Fluffy Caligo has to step in to prevent a fight from breaking out, and finally Fluffy Caligo gets a good brushing as a reward. Later on, the trio sits by the canteen to have a nice meal, but are soon invaded by a bunch of fangirls, who are then later intimidated by Iruma-kun's terrifying rumors, and then all of a sudden an alarm breaks out. Something about battlers gets introduced to us. Basically, it's clubs and societies, albeit a much more intense version, with the seniors starting the freshman hunt for the best freshman, which basically is like a battle and hence the name Battler. In any case, the mad rush for new blood commences, but Alice-chan prevents all the scrubs from getting close to Iruma-kun, and it seems that this is the norm for babblers. Anyway, the student council appears and Amari-chan tries to approach Iruma-kun and recruit him and his friends. Later on, the trio visits the battle exhibition as Iruma collects a load of flyers. Iruma's ring, though, has a mind of its own, and Iruma is dragged around and smashes into a senpai from the magic apparatus Battler, who is apparently wearing something that attracted this ring. Iruma helps to clean up the mess and then later on goes on to explore a few more clubs. A lot of clubs. Anyway, Sullivan Oji-san later on adds more fine-tuning to Iruma's Iruma's ring, allowing for greater and finer control over the magic within, and also greater power in the case of the final para selector. Back to the battlers though, Iruma goes on to try some more dodgeball and tests out his new ring. Seems to be working. Later, a massive explosion occurs right next to Iruma as he enters to find the same senpai from earlier. Turns out he's got Kiryu, and he was adjusting some of his equipment early on when things went a little out of hand. Magic apparatus senpai shows Iruma-kun around the place, and Iruma learns that this senpai is a little weak physically, and that he aspires to invent magical apparatus that someday will allow low-ranked demons to have a better life, with less discrimination in the world. Iruma-kun is inspired and expresses his intention to join the club, to which Kiryu-senpai gladly accepts. Later, Iruma brings Clara and Alice to the club as well, which brings Kiryu-senpai to tears. Iruma-kun later visits Amari for some tea, and she learns that Iruma has already joined a battler, much to her anger. Anyhow, a serious, kind of, high-level meeting amongst the demons takes place. They argue about the issues that they are facing due to the empty Demon Lord seat. They want to pick a candidate, and the 3 most suitable candidates are having tea and raving about their grandkids. However, everyone seems to be quite set on Sullivan taking up the empty seat of Demon Lord, but he still rejects. Later, Amari's father appears to investigate Sullivan or Jisun for crossing the border to the human world illegally. What could this mean? Something fishy is going on here for sure. Anyhow, we'll find out more about what's going on with the plots in the next part of this recap. Thanks for watching, see you and goodbye.